Every now and then, you need to deal with difficult employees. In part one, I talked about how to avoid them in the first place. In part two, I'll walk you through a step-by-step process to deal with difficult employees. Hello, I'm Stephen Goldberg of Optimus Performance, bringing you practical tips and ideas on leadership, team development, and employee performance in the workplace. My previous video on how to deal with difficult employees was an analogy of the school dance, and it was really about identifying who those difficult employees are in terms of, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the ones that you can't fix, and how to avoid them having them on your team, and what to do if you happen to inherit them as a manager or as a business owner. You want to take the necessary steps to get rid of them, actually, because you can't fix them. But employees who are generally fair to excellent employees, you may have some times when there's some difficult behaviors or issues that you need to resolve. So I was thinking through this, and I actually just recently had a situation where I had to deal with a difficult employee. And so I created a worksheet. It's kind of like a cheat sheet. It's really questions to ask and write down the answers to create a plan of action. So these are two issues that I actually faced on a recent hire. And I kind of realized afterwards that in the assessment I did with her, she scored low on independence, which made me think maybe this was one of the causes for her coming to me to solve her problems, because she didn't have a clear process in terms of what to do when faced with this problem, so she defaulted to me. Now, this is a difficult behavior to change because you can't expect people to go from low independence to high independence. But she did have the resources and other attributes, especially her thinking style was quite good, in order to be able to solve these issues on her own. The second thing was grammar. She kept communicating. English is not her first language, and she would communicate in poor grammar. And I pointed out that there are tools available. I mentioned a few that she could use to check her spelling. Now, I have to communicate in French often, and I invested in a paid tool, actually, there's free ones, to correct my spelling and my grammar when I write in French. And of course, I could use things like Google Translate, but writing in French and then using the corrector helps me with my grasp of French and helps me improve. So if it's an employee that's been with you for a while and all of a sudden there's an issue with a certain task or performance, a behavior, if they previously performed it properly and all of a sudden they're not anymore, you want to figure out what has changed to have this occur. If, in my case, the employee has been doing it since she was hired, it was a recent hire, so it's not something I can go back on and say, well, this happened or this may have happened which caused it, or find out from the employee what may have occurred. So this kind of ties in. I just talked about that in my previous answer to the other question. In my case, no, it was like that since she started. Although I did have the impression that that wouldn't be an issue when I went through the interviews and everything. So it just shows you, even though I thought she would be a great fit for the job, it didn't work out as planned. The next question, what has changed, if anything? If yes, what changed, when and what can be done to reverse it? Will addressing this solve the problem? So maybe something occurred in the person's life. It could be on a personal side. It could be change in the work environment. Maybe there's something that she needs to learn new technology, which is impacting the way she does her work or he does his work. So you have to look at any possible change that has occurred which may affect their ability to perform the job. If nothing has changed, either personally, because sometimes even something in their personal life could affect their work. So you need to be aware, and you could sit down obviously with somebody and discuss that with them. I guess that's a question that should be part of this is, have you discussed that with the employee, and have they come up with a reason why this is occurring? So it's not on my cheat sheet now. I'm going to add it in after. I'm going to make this available as a download too. The next question, what has been done to address the issue? So in my case, I spoke with her several times about it. I emailed her, and there was some improvement in the grammar when she decided to use some templates that were available to her. But I did catch some communication where there was off grammar, the spelling was off, and this kept reoccurring, so it was making me more unhappy with her performance as time went on, because she wasn't heeding my feedback and doing something about it to correct the situation. So the next question is, what has not been done that can be done to address the issue? So what I always recommend is, if you haven't already done this, put an agreement in place and spell out what needs to be corrected. Put it in writing. I have a process called the win-win agreement, where you ask employees to write down their goals and objectives. I did keep a performance record, and I do have a form for that you could download as well, and I highly recommend. And you could, keeping a performance record is not just for things that need to be improved, but it's also things that you want to give positive feedback for, because that's important too. You don't always want to be telling the employee what they need to work on or change or improve. You want to reinforce what they're doing well as well. So keeping a performance record is important, but then putting down the key things that they need to improve in writing and having them agree to that, and then setting a follow-up date to see if it's working is highly recommended. The other thing is very important too. Does the employee, and maybe you can reverse the order of this, you could actually put this ahead of some of the other questions. Does the employee have all the tools and support required to do the work as required? So in my case, I think yes, I did provide whatever I could. There was some apps that we were using, third-party apps where there was support available, and I had to keep reminding her to reach out to this support person. So you want to make sure that you are providing the support, the tools that the person needs to do the job, whether it's you that's providing it or somebody else on the team that's supporting that person, and that they're available, or any training or whatever that the person needs to get up to speed and resolve the issue. So the next question, has the provision of tools and support resolved the issue? So this is a final question I usually ask in terms of performance issue. If their life depended on it, could they do it, and could they do it on a consistent basis? If yes, then there's something, a motivational thing that the employee is not telling you, or there's some issue that you haven't uncovered yet, and you need to go back and do that. And also question the employee if the job is motivating enough, or if they should be seeking something else. Maybe you have something else to offer them. If the answer is no, then you need to replace that person. It's just obvious. So those are the questions that I think are really important to ask on this cheat sheet or worksheet, whatever you want to call it, and go through this. And if you have some to suggest, please put it in the comments below. This is what I came up with. This is my sample. And if you walk through these questions and kind of like figure out what the problem is and how to resolve it, maybe you'll be able to turn that issue around and get the employee back to performing as expected, or simply replace them if it's futile effort. You don't want to just keep trying over and over and over again. So I hope this tip is good for you in terms of addressing any difficult employees. If you haven't already watched the first video, I recommend that. It's a great analogy that I learned previously in my training and development to become a facilitator. Check out the blog articles that go along with this video. You'll find also in the description where you could download this worksheet and others that I make available for free as well. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk again soon.